Hi, good evening, and very good evening. Well, today is a special day because I'm going to launch the very first episode of VUEmours. Yeah, you have Nikon rumors, Canon rumors, Sony rumors, Alpha rumors, Photo rumors, and as you are at VUEgraphy channel, so I'm going to name it VUEmours. VUEmours, or let's say VUEmours. Yeah, that's the right word. So very welcome to the very first episode of VUEmours. What we are going to talk about today? Well, we are going to talk about only one thing, which is the upcoming Nikon camera Z8. Yep, I'm going to talk specifically about Z8, and only we have this Z5, which I'm using for quite a while now, and all my previous videos were made on Z5. So if Z5 is in my hand, so what I'm shooting with right now? Good question. Well, I'm shooting with Z30 right now. As you can see, I'm shooting a 4K 30p on Z30, and I hope this is the very first time I'm recording any video for my YouTube channel. So I hope it will do the job, the right job. So let's jump about the Z8 and what we are going to have in Z8. Z8 is coming soon, like in August you will be having everything about Z8. It will be officially announced, hopefully, and everybody's looking for it. The thing which everybody concerned is, what if Z8 comes? What's going to happen with Z7 or Z7 too? Because there will be not one, two cameras. Yes, two cameras are going to be announced in August by Nikon. First is Z8, and second is Z6 Mark III or Z6 III. Now, what's so special about Z6 III? We'll talk later, but only we are going to focus on Z8. Z8, everybody knows who are following the trend and rumors. It's going to be 61 megapixel. It's going to be using the same sensor, same resolution which we have in Sony A7R4. Now, what exactly the other thing which makes Z8 special? Well, as far as my sixth sense goes, and the way I have seen the way the Nikon is putting up stuff and features into their upcoming camera bodies, and this is what they have to do, otherwise Z8 will going to hit them back. And I am expecting that the Z8 is going to have the autofocus system of Z9. Yep, they have to. It's going to be contain X-Speed 7 processor. It's going to be 61 megapixel, the same processor which we have in Z8, because only with X-Speed 7 processor you're going to have that awesome autofocus capability that we experience in Z9. I use Z9 for quite a lot, for many months, and I can tell you, I used Z6, Z7, Z62, Z7 Z5 I'm using. This is everyday shooting, and now I'm shooting with Z30. I use this camera into the field, and it's doing amazing job considering the price point that camera is available for. Now they have to put whatever the Z9 is famous for, the autofocus system and everything. They have to put that autofocus capability into Z8, otherwise it will be very difficult for to sell Z8. And the Z9 autofocus capability can only be possible because of X-Speed 7 processor, because it 10 to 12 times more processing power than Z6. That's awesome. That's how much awesome the X-Speed 7 processor is. It's considered as like Apple M1 chip. M1 chip in Apple, which is Apple customized silicon on the Apple laptops, that's changed the entire landscape of the laptop industry. It's going to be exactly the same thing. It's going to be exactly the same like what you experienced in previous Nikon Z cameras. Nikon Z9 came with X-Speed 7 processor and it changed everything. This is exactly what's going to have or must be in Z8. So 61 megapixel X-Speed 7 processor with Z9 autofocus capabilities, 8K video. 8K is a must for Z8, else there will be no, because there is no other camera other than Z9 who can provide you 8K. Not Z6, not Z6, not Z7, not Z62, not Z7 II. So it must be. Next, what else we are going to have? Well, it must be now. Once you think about the Episode-7 processor, you think, okay, it should be shooting at 120 frames per second because at 4K 120p, that 4K 120p, which is around 11.3 megapixel or 11.5 megapixel per JPEG, which basically not stitched together to make a video, that's how Nikon Z9 able to capture 120 frames per second because it's 4K. 4K can only be captured from 12 megapixel camera. Any 12 megapixel camera on planet can capture 4K video. So you captured 4K 120 frames per second, but instead of making a video, you unstitch them and you just dump all those 120 frames into the memory card. That's how Nikon Z9 able to make 120 frames per second. It's unstitched images. That's it. Nothing more. That's how it is. So 120 frames per second calculation, autofocus, auto exposure by the Episode-7 processor in Z9. Same has to be in Z8. It must be. Now, next question is how much the dynamic range is going to be. Well, see, this is the thing. I'm using Z30, and it's really strange. Sometimes it bothers me because whenever you put the good stuff into any camera, obviously you put the higher price point. I remember when D850 was launched, it contains everything. When it comes to DSLR, everything. It has the 8K time-lapse video. That was the very first time when anybody in the history of camera heard about the word 8K video. Of course it was time-lapse, but 8K video. D850 was first introduced that term 8K into the camera. I'm not talking about it's a video or it's a time-lapse video, but it was a video. 8K. So D850 launched the word 8K. It was high resolution. It was 10 frames per second with, of course, with battery grip. And it has 153 focus point, and it has this and that. Focus peaking was introduced in the DSLR. There was no one else before offers focus peaking in the DSLR. So that was it. So it has so many first feature in D850 which made, and the price of D850 was very much high. Even still today, D850 is not a cheap camera. It's still expensive because of the features. The very best features is SNR was good, the output, the image quality was good, the analog to digital converter, the pixel, the 2 memory card slots, the 8K video, focus peak, and there is so much about D850. Everything was the best in D850. Now there is another camera offered by Nikon, which is D750. Why I mentioned D850? Because I want to give you the package detail. The D850 comes with the best of the best package. Alright, everything was superior in D850. Then we have another camera from Nikon, which is D750. D750 have several recalls, but the only thing which made D750 selling like a hotcake till today is its SNR firmware. The software inside the D750, it's so freaking amazing that you can shoot at high ISO up to 12,800, even beyond at some point. And the dynamic range, the shadow recovery, the highlight recovery was so amazing in D750 that everybody was, buying the camera like crazy. In Nikon history, D750 is the best selling camera of all time. Why? Because just one software inside the D750 make it the best from the selling perspective. Yeah, it has 4 recalls. That's another story which we are not going to talk about. So every camera is having its own selling point. So if we take these two examples and we put them both into Z8, Z8 must be having something amazing which makes you buy it. It's superior SNR firmware, just like D750. It must have the amazing image output, just like D850 or Z7 II. it must have 8K video, with just like Z9. Now 8K 30p or 60p, that's subjective, but I am assuming it's not going to be 60p because it will create so much heat, and as we are expecting that it's going to be in a body form factor like this one, like Z5. So Nikon not going to make 8K 60p. They are not going to take, because it generates too much heat. So 8K 30p, like 25 or 24 frames, 25 frames and 30 frames. That's what I'm expecting. 8K, and then it's going to be same 4K oversampled. I hope it will be oversampled, 120 frames per second, and it will be a slow-mo as well, and then 61 megapixel. Now the dynamic range, high ISO, that again depends on the SNR firmware, just like D750. They have to put the best SNR. Now I'm focusing more on SNR because I'm using Z30 right now and I'm shooting with this, and trust me, I was blown away with the SNR performance of Z30. Z30 SNR was way better than I was expecting. It's better than ZFC, it's better than Z50. Yes, considering the price point, on which this camera is available, and it's way cheaper than Z50 and ZFC, and it performs better when it comes to high ISO, when it comes to recovering shadows, when it's recovering highlights. I have used this camera in extreme lighting conditions, and I was really surprised. I was not expecting that the raw files coming out from Z30 is going to be so awesome. Now many of you will say, oh, it's a vlog camera. Of course it's a vlog camera. It's for making videos, just like I'm making one right now. But you have to think that video is just those bunch of images captured in one single second and they're stitched together. So ultimately video is image. So if you take the performance of the image, it will apply the same in video. So that's how is it. So I take the basic unit into consideration. I evaluate the camera performance on the basic unit of camera, which is image, and I found the image quality of Z30 is so amazing. So ultimately it will transfer into the video, and which you are seeing right now. So that's it. Z30 is really amazing. You can shoot up to 6400 ISO, like walk in the park, piece of cake for Z30. Well, I'm not talking about Z30. I'm just talking about Z8. So I was just trying to prove you the point that how good or how strong the SNR firmware each camera is, and it can make or break the camera performance. So Z8 must be having the best SNR, continuing the legacy of D850. D850 was the groundbreaking camera, the best DSLR in the history of photography till date. Everybody praises D850. Why? Because of the image quality, because of the I'm not talking about the autofocus, because of the what else it can offer you. 8K time lapse and focus peaking and image quality, 45 megapixel, and the dynamic range. Its ISO performance is much better than its competitors, especially like Canon 5DS or 5DSR, who sucks at 400 ISO. You can push the ISO of D850 under the controlled environment up to 1600. 400 versus 1600. That's two stop over. So it performs better. In the same way, the other competitor Sony A7R3, now A7R4. The more the megapixel, the worse the low light performance. That's the simple rule. So Nikon has to put the best SNR into Z8 to compensate for the lack of gain that they are going to have by having so many megapixels, which is going to be 61. So yep, Z8, I have a very long wish list, and of course 2 card slots, and I'm expecting it's going to be CF Express and UHS2 SD card slot, which most probably it's going to be. Now, the thing which bothers most of the people, if Z8 comes, what will happen with Z7 or Z7 II? Because now we are going to have 2 cameras, Z8 and Z6 Mark III. So that clearly tells that Z7 is finished, khalas, bye bye, tata. So Z8 will overcome all the area which Z7 or Z7 II was covering with better autofocus performance, because we are expecting that it's going to have the Xpeed 7 processor just like Z9, and Nikon must put that processor and that autofocus capability of Z9 into Z8, as there is nobody is going to buy Z8. They have to put that that engine, that core of Z9 into Z8. Of course, with the high resolution, that will bottleneck the high frames per second, the buffer, the ISO performance, the dynamic range is going to be, again, depends on the SNR, but the buffer especially. With C9, there is a buffer limit. With the right amount of memory card, you can shoot till card fulls. There is the buffer. It's the memory card that limits the performance of Z9. But in Z8 is going to be reverse. It's going to be camera which is going to bottleneck the buffer, not the machine. Because of the high resolution, too much data processor has to process, so it will create the bottleneck. I'm expecting the buffer should be somewhere between 35 frames to 50 frames, 50 frames, 35 to 60 frames, somewhere in between. In journal case, 55, so 35 to 50 or 55, that will be the buffer of Z8 as per my best estimation. And autofocus system has to be like Z9, Xpeed 7 processor. It's a must in Z8, and 61 megapixel, could be more, could be 80, but every 99% 61 megapixel. And 2 card slots, better dynamic range than Z7 II, better ISO performance than Z7 II. And what else? The number of autofocus point, now it doesn't matter, because all of them are more than 200 plus, 250 plus, somewhere between 270 or 280 autofocus points that we are expecting. So we have a lot of and of course 8K up to 30p, that's we are expecting. So hopefully, and I am pretty much sure that 8K will be in Z8, else there is no other price point, there is no other selling point for Z8. So Xpeed 7 processor, just like Z9, autofocus system, just like Z9, 61 megapixel, just like competitor, 8K up to 30p, it has to be 4K 120, yeah. The burst, maximum frames per second, yeah, maximum frames per second. Well, the competitors' high resolution camera like our Canon R5 shoot up to 20 raw files, 30 frames electronics, or it's 30K raw. No, 20K raw, 30K JPEG. That's my last memory recalls for Canon R5. So same applies over here. If Nikon goes beyond 20 frames per second, that will be really great. 20 frames per second raw, which I doubt. It goes up to 20 frames raw, not more than that. That's what I'm expecting. So, yep, 20 frames per second. But electronic shooting, Nikon Z9 can frames 120 frames per second. This can do as well, like Z8 can do 120 frames per second. with 11.5 megapixel JPEG. And if this comes, oh man, the wildlife photographers, the action and sports photojournalists, they will love going to this this feature if 120 frames per second comes into Z8, because the price of the Z8 will be less than Z9. But again, if 120 frames per second comes in Z8, it will cut a big market of Z9, which I don't know. It's now Nikon marketing team has to decide what kind of feature they have to put into Z8 or not. But I wish Z8 comes with 120 frames per second. It will blow away everybody. A lot of semi-professional or serious amateurs or enthusiasts, they will cache this 120 frames per second feature into bird photography, action photography, wildlife photography, photojournalism, and all that. I use that feature in Z9 and I can tell you, it's a game changer. Especially the wildlife bird photographer, it's a game changer. But again, it will cut the market of Z9. So I doubt they will put that 120 frames per second into Z8, but I wish. It's my wish list. So let's see if it comes or not. But oh, come on, man, it must. Nikon, please put that 120 frames per second into Z8. It will help everybody. And the dynamic range, well, it depends on the SNR. I don't know. So let's see. Let's hope for the best. And I'm looking forward to have this camera once it will launch. I'm going to request Nikon to give me for testing, and I'll share with you the results of it. So thank you for watching this video, the very first VUEmours video, which is like View plus Rumors VUEmours video. I'm trying to make these kind of videos in future to bring knowledge to you guys. Thanks, and I'll see you guys in some other video.